Good morning. An age that started in a game lodge in Kenya in 1952 ended in a bedroom in Balmoral. Queen Elizabeth II passed away peacefully on Thursday evening, shortly after her family had gathered around her. Her reign was a feat of continuity, embodied in one person for longer than any reign in human history, except that of Louis XIV. The Queen's reign straddled 2 centuries, the Cold War and a turbulent peace, decolonisation, and the slow erosion of a class society, the Beatles and Adele. In Gibraltar, it straddled 2 referendums with resoundingly British votes, constitutional development, the birth of the Gibraltar Parliament as we know it today. Tens of millions of her subjects were born and died within her lifetime. She appointed 15 prime ministers and united Britons more than she divided them. But whatever your views on the monarchy, her death has come as an emotional shock and a prompt for profound reflection. She was the Queen of Gibraltar. The Governor has asked us to walk tall, as we have been fortunate to live in this special, unique reign. The Chief Minister said this National Day, yesterday, our 30th, was to be devoted to her, while underlining that Gibraltar's allegiance is to the Crown, and now to King Charles III. Gibraltar today joins Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales for a reading of a proclamation. We are live from Broadcasting House, from the convent and from Devil's Gap Battery. Thank you for joining us. I'm joined by Christine Vasquez, the GBC News Editor. I'll say a quick good morning, Christine, and I think we're going to go to Rosa Stengo, who's at the convent. Ros.
Well, I'm joined by the Honorary Colonel of the Royal Gibraltar Regiment, Francis Brancato. What a sense of history today.
It is indeed. It's a very, very historic occasion, obviously. And none of us, most people alive, haven't been through this. And it's something which is going to be so historic for Gibraltar as we welcome the new king.
Has the regiment been preparing for this moment? What sort of work goes into preparation such as this?
Yes, I mean, there's always a certain amount of preparation. I mean, obviously, the regiment is quite well prepared for ceremonials, for parades, but this particular format is totally new. So there has been a number of, I would have thought, preparation over a number of years to make sure that everything goes according to plan. There is a certain procedure for this, which is the famous bridges, as they're called, for each member of the royal family. And those are generally dusted off and practiced. And of course, the gun salute is one of the major things that we carry out. So again, there's a lot of preparation for that, yes.
And in general terms, can you just explain to us what we can expect? The regiment is going to be marching here in front of the convent.
So I think it follows the same format as in the UK and the rest of the devolved capitals in Scotland and Cardiff and the like. So I think it's the governor will read the proclamation. The regiment will march on parade before that with the colour. There will be accorded a royal salute. Then cups will be taken off, and there'll be the allegiance, which is God Save the King, with the cups off. So and then the parade marches off back to its duties. So it's a very, very set format, similar to what you're going to be seeing in Cardiff, Edinburgh, and so forth.
I mean, of course, the regiment has performed many of these ceremonial duties in the past, but this has got to be something extra special, different. I mean, there must be some nerves there as well.
Of course, this should be a one-off for everybody taking part. So nobody's being through it, obviously. So the format actually is quite simple, but of course the occasion will get to people. It is obviously very, very historic. And of course, it's the first time that a new commanding officer, Colonel Matt Moore, is on parade. So he's just being in post a week. So it's his first sort of, being thrown into the lion's den, as it were, taking over this parade.
A very bittersweet moment, though, because obviously the Queen was the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. That now switches over to King Charles. Just a moment of your thoughts on the Queen's death and also the new sovereign.
Yes. Of course, it was so tragic, and we owe such a great debt of gratitude to Her Majesty. I mean, personally, I've met her twice. The regiment was really in her heart. As you know, for the first time we did public duties, she consented having a photograph taken with her inside the Grand Staircase in Buckingham Palace, and she spoke to quite a few of our soldiers. So yes, it's something which we will never forget. Of course, we all swore allegiance to the Queen. That is now transferred automatically to the King. we carry on with the service to the crowns of the country.
You mentioned Buckingham Palace. What wonderful memories this summer.
Oh yes, it was fantastic. We were also very lucky, of course, to have the colours presented. I think we were just about the last but one colour which was given under the Queen's reign. I think the Irish Guards had theirs in July. So even more special because she was there, she was watching from her apartments, and I know from friends that she has mentioned subsequent to that how much she enjoyed the parade and watching us in Windsor Castle.
Francis Brancato, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, thank you. Okay, no?
Thank you, Ros. The Honorary Colonel of the Royal Gibraltar Regiment, Francis Brancato, speaking to our reporter Rosa Stengo outside the convent where the Proclamation Parade will take place this morning. If you're just joining us, thank you for doing so. I'm Jonathan Scott, joined in the studio on GBC Television and on Radio Gibraltar by the GBC News editor Christine Vasquez. So, Christine, what can we expect from the next half hour or so?
So the parade is just getting ready to start. We believe that they will actually go onto the parade ground at around 20 to 12, and 100 mixed personnel are expected in Convent Place from the MOD and from the emergency services. So the governor reading that proclamation. It was, as we know, it was read yesterday in London twice. So in the morning from the balcony St James's Palace, and then in the afternoon from the Royal Exchange in the city. And today, so we were talking yesterday about the importance of perhaps Gibraltar being part of that family of the British family, because as we know, it's in Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, and of course Gibraltar. And as we keep saying, flags are up now for the King's proclamation, and they will come down after a gun salute from Devil's Gap, fired from Devil's Gap.
Yes, so this will be, that gun salute that you refer to will be the latest in 3, and we're seeing now some drone footage of yesterday's gun salute, which of course we carried live on GBC Television, and they've gone extremely well for the Royal Gibraltar Regiment.
The weather has been absolutely amazing, and those shots that we've been seeing of the gun salute, of course used internationally, and Gibraltar being part of all those gun salutes, and Gibraltar looked really, really good.
Yes, there was an annoying moment for many Gibraltarians on the eve of National Day. Sky News had they said Gibraltar, Spain, and as we understand it, having spoken to the office of the Chief Minister, they got in touch with Sky News very quickly.
Words were exchanged.
Words were exchanged, and that was rectified, and the report taken down and edited. But generally, our images have been taken by the BBC and broadcast worldwide. Yes, so it has been very much a global event, hasn't it? And Gibraltar featuring in its own way in that international story. It was a muted affair yesterday, National Day, a very different National Day to what had been expected. The mood changed profoundly, obviously, on the news of Her Majesty's passing. So we did see some red and white in town.
A lot of red and white.
A lot of red and white, yes. Not the sea that we normally see
not the
in
crowds,
casemates.
not the crowds of people, not the numbers, but certainly a lot of red and white. A lot of people had taken the Chief Minister's advice of what he was going to do, and by wearing red and white with perhaps a little black ribbon or a black tie.
Yes. I think that was useful advice to sort of know what the appropriate thing was, because from speaking to people on Main Street yesterday, I did get from a number of them this idea that, you know, it was too significant a day not to mark, but also
there was confusion.
Yes, you know, people were feeling a bit bewildered. You know, I want to mark it, I want to celebrate the 30th anniversary of National Day, but I don't want to be disrespectful to the Queen. So I think the Chief Minister's steer was helpful. Red and white, but maybe a little bit of black, and mark the event, toast her, get together with your family and friends, but make sure, you didn't say make sure, but, toast the Queen if you can, and if you feel inclined to do so, and remember, as the Governor said, that it's been a special era of stability, and obviously we know that Gibraltar loves the beach on National Day, and
there were a lot of barbecues and a lot of people there. Oh, there's a delicious barbecue.
If you're a meat eater.
You're a meat eater, of course.
The beaches were full, and we saw a special tribute as well at Camp Bay, which local personality Malcolm Blagg delivered. And I think people were genuinely thinking of the Queen. And
we were discussing this yesterday as well, that I think one of the things that's come out of this now is that it is a modern monarchy for a different era. They are different times. Yesterday we saw the proclamation, the Privy Council, the council, for the first time actually being broadcast, and something which had been so...
TV first, huh?
Yes, and so spiritual and so silent, so secret, almost ritualistic, with kings being deities.
Okay, let me just interrupt you for a quick moment, Christina, as I think we're going to cross over to the convent. Rosa Stengo is there.
Hold on, but the regiment hasn't come. I'm doing it before the regiment. Well, there's a sizable crowd outside the convent today, a real sense of history in the making. The Queen, the Sovereign, of course, is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, so all those armed forces, all the branches are represented here today. We also have the Scouts, and as you would expect, there is a very heavy police presence. We will expect the proclamation to follow in the format as we saw yesterday at St James's Palace. And a very quick word about the Governor himself, who will be stepping out onto that balcony at 12 o'clock to make that proclamation. So David Steele, he is the 30th Governor, including acting governors, in Gibraltar since the Queen's coronation in the early 50s in 1953, and it falls on him to make that proclamation. We can hear the Royal Gibraltar Regiment making its approach, so I'm going to move off the streets to allow them to pass here. That this is the proclamation parade that is making its way in front of the convent, ahead of the Governor stepping out onto that balcony with the Chief Minister and other dignitaries. This is a seminal moment in Gibraltar's history when the Governor will pronounce King Charles III our new sovereign.
Live from the convent on Main Street.
On what is a very historic day, certainly.
You're with GBC Television and Radio Gibraltar. We're live from Convent Place, from Devil's Gap Battery, and also from Broadcasting House. So, Christine, do we have some of the names of the individuals who are in this parade with the Royal Gibraltar Regiment?
Yes, so the battery commander is Major Charles Bonpande.
So he'll be up at Devil's Gap Battery. We also know that there's a new colonel, isn't there?
That's right. They're all getting this sort of baptism of fire, aren't they? Yes, so the commanding officer is Lieutenant Colonel Moore. The RSM is Warrant Officer 1 Henderson, and the colour ensign is Lieutenant Millward. And there they are, outside number 6 Convent Place.
And we did mention that there is a services guard, so we've got the Royal Gibraltar Police, Gibraltar Defence Police, Borders and Coast Guard, HM Customs, We know that the Royal Navy and RAF personnel, I think, will also be part of today's parade.
So once again, the tri-services. And the governor is expected to take the royal salute from the convent balcony ahead of reading the proclamation. As we said, proclamations read today in Gibraltar, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. And flags will be lowered across the UK once the last cannon fires from Devil's Gap battery.
So this is similar to what we saw happening in London yesterday. So this parade taken by the new Colonel Matt Moore.
These are the new colours presented, of course, this summer. They are being paraded in.
And that in itself was a momentous occasion for the Royal Gibraltar Regiment.
It really has been quite a year for the Gibraltar Regiment, with the public duties outside Buckingham Palace as well.
And that beautiful idea that it was moved in order for Her Majesty to be able to watch them
from the window.
From the window. And Gibraltar's link to Queen Elizabeth II in that respect also exemplified by the National Day message that she sent the Chief Minister as one of her last official acts.
Quite strange to see a parade at Convent Place. It sort of takes us back to my school days and the changing of the guards there. We haven't. I can't remember a parade there for quite a while. I mean, just think of casemates and
even the sort of more everyday changing of the guard outside the convent is always a real tourist spectacle. No?
Yes.
There's always, so I think if there are any visitors in town for this today, and we have seen quite a number in recent days coming to Gibraltar from nearby Spain in order to be part of the
of the Britishness.
Yes, the grieving, the gathering of thoughts that is happening across the world, especially in the Commonwealth of Nations. But I think people who might have been in nearby Spain on holiday, or perhaps they're retired there or live there, they have come to Gibraltar. We saw them signing the Book of Condolence.
And they have organised themselves. The expat community in Spain has organised itself to have tributes to the Queen.
Mm. And we've been quite lucky with the weather. I don't know if we can show our viewers. Apologies, we'll try our best to describe it to our listeners. But there was a very dramatic fog that rolled in last night, which really sort of made me slightly concerned that our pictures today, after having had such excellent weather in recent days, wasn't going to be quite as good as it has been. But actually it's cleared. The dramatic fog that rolled in last night has moved on, thankfully, and it's a beautiful blue sky with some cloud, but a lovely backdrop for today's Proclamation parade, which you can follow here live on GBC television and on Radio Gibraltar. So Christine, talk us through again for anybody who's just joining us. We know that the parade is being led by the new commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Matt Moore. We know that the governor, well, there's an honour guard which is the component of the Royal Gibraltar Regiment. We know that there's a services guard.
So we've got 100 mixed personnel, about 100 mixed personnel from the MOD and the emergency services in the parade. We can see that it has attracted people to go and witness it and just, I think, be part of this amazing day. Once the proclamation of the King has happened, the gun salute from Devil's Gap will take place, and then we will have 3 cheers for the King before the parade marches off.
So even though we are in this period of mourning for the loss of Queen Elizabeth II, the flags, after having come down, the flags have gone back up, and maybe you can explain the significance of that.
Well, it is very much the Queen is dead, long live the King. And yesterday, when the proclamation started being read, after being okayed by the Accession Council, that was King Charles III's day. This is King Charles III's Day, and we carry on here in other parts of the United Kingdom and Gibraltar, and then we go back into mourning. And of course we know that the Queen's coffin has just left Balmoral this morning. It will rest in the throne room at Holyrood House Palace and will be taken to St Giles's Cathedral tomorrow and flown to London on Tuesday. Of course, the other thing that we know is that last night they actually announced the date of the funeral for Monday the 19th.
And we can see that the regiment is live, well, we are live from Devil's Gap Battery at the moment, and we can see that the Royal Gibraltar Regiment is wearing white ceremonials, they're number 1s, and I understand that's because they haven't yet moved into their winter uniforms. The last time that there was a gun salute fired from Devil's Gap Battery, of course, was to mark that 1 minute silence for the Duke of Edinburgh. It's a beautiful view from up there. And that's Major Charles Bonfante in shot, if I'm not mistaken.
He will be the battery commander.
We see the leader of the opposition, Keith Asapardi, and the leader of Together Gibraltar, Marlene Hassan Naon, together with the mayor, Christian Santos. The bishop is there too, Carmel Zamit. The dean, Ian Tarrant. The speaker
of the House.
Melvin Farrell, the Deputy Chief Minister, Joseph Garcia, the Imam. So it's very much an inclusive and one of those moments that I think...
politicians and leaders on the balcony.
It's one of those moments that I suppose if you do hold an office, as these individuals do, it's a big moment which will go down in their own sort of personal histories as being important and
have-
and an honour to be there, I'm sure.
We haven't lived this in 70 years, but the extraordinary thing is that nobody's actually lived it before either. Certainly the reading of the proclamation was always done in public, but everything else, the accession council, for me, I just thought it was extraordinary that we were actually the first people to be witnessing that ever.
Yes. And as we await the governor,
And
Sir
the
David
chief-
Steele, and the Chief Minister, Fabian Picardo, a quick reminder of some of the words that Mr. Picardo used in his ministerial statement. He said that, of course, there will be sadness at this moment, but he asked us all to remember the Queen's smile, her style and panache. He congratulated the regiment on what was a seamless gun salute on Friday, and they had another yesterday. As we said earlier, images of which, filmed by GBC, were broadcast worldwide by the BBC, and we're expecting that to happen again today. Gibraltar was her rock and she was our rock in hard times. That's what Mr. Picardo said. And he described how her visit in 1954, was it, Christine? Mm-hmm. And the subsequent restrictions by the Spanish dictator Francisco Franco served to define Gibraltarians and our loyalty to the Crown, as cemented in 2 referendums with resoundingly British results. And the Chief Minister said that each step that Gibraltar has taken towards greater self-government so far, those steps have been taken during Queen Elizabeth's reign, saying that she has been an example to us all, highlighting how she abided by the COVID rules when her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, died, showing us all one of those sort of important aspects of Britishness, the rule of law and following rules, the importance of playing it straight. And really that sort of steadfastness and example is pretty unique in recent times, Christine. Times that have been defined by uncertainty, and there have been tumultuous years with Brexit and the changes of government in the UK, and she has been a pillar of strength.
And we always emphasise how important that is. I believe that's the governor. No, it's not the governor coming out now. But in terms of changes as well, you mentioned a new king. It just seems like a new era. A new king. We've got a new prime minister. I'm just looking at the parade now. We've got a relatively new CBF, a new commanding officer. It just feels like a time of change, and with the Queen's death, certainly the end of an era. And people have embraced King Charles. When he was on his way to Buckingham Palace yesterday and stopped the car, there we have the Chief Minister now.
Who, of course, has pointed out that while we mourn Her Majesty's passing, our allegiance is to the Crown, and now King Charles III. Thank you for choosing GBC Television and Radio Gibraltar. We're live from the convent on Main Street on this very poignant day. We're expecting the Governor, Sir David Steele, to take to the balcony in just a moment.
Whereas it has pleased Almighty God to call to his mercy our late Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II, of blessed and glorious memory, by whose decease the crown is solely and rightfully come to the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George. I, David George Steele, Governor and Commander-in-Chief, Gibraltar, do now hereby, with one voice and consent of tongue and heart, publish and proclaim that the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George is now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become our only lawful and rightful liege lord, Charles III. By the grace of God of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of his other realms and territories, King, Head of the Commonwealth, Defender of the Faith, to whom we do acknowledge all faith and obedience and humble affection, beseeching God, by whom kings and queens do reign, to bless his majesty with long and happy years to reign over us. Given at Gibraltar, this 11th day of September, in the year of our Lord, 2022.
Number 3 gun! Escort to the colour. Halt!
Parade! Final hit! Final hit!
We're hearing applause at Convent Place on Main Street on this historic occasion. The Governor, Sir David Steele, officially proclaiming King Charles III, King of Gibraltar. We're live on GBC television and on Radio Gibraltar from the convent, from Devil's Gap Battery and from Broadcasting House.
We have heard the words, God save the King, on the rock for the very first time.
And those 3 cheers on what is a day to think about the new sovereign, with the flags not at half-mast for the time being, because it's a day to celebrate the new monarch, but we've also heard the Governor and the Chief Minister invite us to remember how fortunate we've been to live in this reign, unequalled in duration, dedication and devotion, as the new king put it.
I must say, my heart has gone out to the Governor because he was, of course, ADC to the Queen. So he's feeling this at a very personal level. And I don't think today could have been easy for him. It must have
certainly
been,
not.
It must
Well,
have been.
I think we all felt that when he read a live statement on the Thursday night, and it was very clear that I mean, I've heard it said that in effect we are, the Commonwealth family of nations is now a family of orphans, but for somebody who has had a personal
relationship
with Her Majesty, then all the more so. As we understand it, there is at the moment, I think that the Queen is being moved. Her coffin has left Balmoral for Edinburgh, and thousands are lining that route. These are images which are just in.
We speak of that personal relationship, and of course Balmoral, a lot of the villagers around Balmoral have had a lot of dealings with the royal family. The royal family goes to church very often. They see them coming in and out. So it is perhaps a bit more intimate than Buckingham Palace. Here we're seeing villagers who have grown up with the royal family, perhaps have seen the Queen as a very young girl growing up. And of course Balmoral, that special place for the family, their summer holidays, that's where she was really happy as a really outdoorsy person. Special place.
So I think we're going to cross now to Convent Place, where reporter Ros Astengo is going to bring us an update.
Yes, huge crowds here outside the convent watching that proclamation, that historic proclamation. I'm actually joined by Lord Rogan, who was over, I believe, for National Day, but it turned into a completely different
Absolutely.
situation.
We've been invited here by the government on several occasions for the National Day, which we greatly appreciate coming. And this is a sad occasion. It has to be all curtailed, but we understand why. And we're here sympathising with the people of Gibraltar in the sad occasion of the death of our glorious monarch. But we look forward to celebrating the new king.
Lord Rogan, you're going to be receiving the Queen's coffin at Westminster Abbey. Can you just tell us about your role?
That's correct. I'm not totally sure what the whole thing's a movable feast. I'm not quite sure what the role is, but several from the Lords have been invited to receive the coffin as it comes into Westminster Cathedral, having come from, I think, Holyrood House. So that's all going to take place on Wednesday at 2:30, and then the Queen will be lying in state in Westminster Hall for the next 3 days.
Lord Rogan, your thoughts on the ceremony today?
Well, it was very moving, very appropriate, and typical Gibraltarian, hit all the right spots. So we were delighted to be here and share with the people of Gibraltar their sympathy for the demise of the late Queen.
Thank you very much, Lord Rogan. I'll let you get on.
Good morning.
Let's see if we can get some other reactions here. Hello, excuse me, madam, if I can ask for your reaction to the proclamation of the King today. What are your thoughts?
Well, we're quite lucky to be here to actually see it. We're just on a cruise ship, so we arrived here this morning, going back at lunchtime, but it was an amazing sight to see.
Emotional?
Very emotional, yes. It's a big thing that's happening, isn't it? You know, losing the Queen, mother, well, the Queen, should I say. And now we've got King Charles. It'll take a lot of getting used to, but he'll do a good job, like his mum.
Thank you very much. What are you doing the rest of the day on the Rock?
We're just here till lunchtime, then we're back on the cruise, and then back home. Okay?
Enjoy. Thank you very much. And let me see if could I possibly ask this lady here your thoughts today?
Grandmother asking you. She's not very good at hearing.
It's okay.
But today, they talked about King Charles becoming king, and the lady's asking what you think about that.
I think it's great. I hope he does very well. I'm sure he will.
A very proud day for Gibraltar.
Yes, it is. We are very proud of it.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. Large crowds here. We are waiting for the Chief Minister. He is going to be coming down outside the convent now, and he's going to be saying a few words to us. We'll come back to you as soon as he's with us.
Thank you, Ros. That was lovely. You're listening to Radio Gibraltar and watching GBC television on this historic day, a moving ceremony, as we heard there. I think underlining Gibraltar's very rich relationship with the British monarchy, the British crown. I think we've got some images to share with our viewers of an amazing visit earlier this summer for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, which really underscored, Christine, as I say, how close to many Gibraltarians' hearts, most Gibraltarians' hearts, I dare to say, the crown is an important part of our British identity. And as we've heard the Chief Minister say, it's obviously a sad moment with the Queen passing, despite her 96 years of age. Some of us irrationally thought that she was going to be with us forever because she always had been our Queen. But nothing lasts forever. And although we mourn her passing...
Truly fantastic that she got to celebrate her Platinum Jubilee, because we did get a bit of a scare, if you remember, in February when she started talking about mobility issues. She couldn't open Parliament, so we did have a bit of a scare, but yes, Platinum celebrations.
It was a special few days where I think a lot of people, after the COVID pandemic and ahead of several other difficult moments this summer, it was a moment where people did come together and celebrate life and our
her life, because we can't stress it enough. She really was an extraordinary lady, and people do love her.
Yeah, and so the bunting was up, the red, white, and blue, and there was a real feel-good atmosphere in town, and really soaking up some of the sort of the thoughts of the individuals as it all unfolded. Was quite funny. No, it was quite heartwarming, because the Queen and the Crown mean different things for different people, but certainly for monarchists, it was, sort of like celebrating their grandmother's birthday. It was
definitely. We had that royal visit as well, which was just the icing on the cake for the celebrations.
Definitely. Right, we're going to go back to Convent Place, I think. You're live with Radio Gibraltar and GBC Television, and I believe our reporter Rosa Stengo is with the Chief Minister.
Well, I'm joined now by the Chief Minister, Fabian Picardo, outside the convent. Mr. Picardo, what an incredible moment in Gibraltar's history, a new sovereign.
This is a seminal moment, and we have had the proclamation now in Gibraltar, reflecting the proclamation of the Accession Council yesterday in London. Gibraltar today pledges its allegiance to a new king, the same crown, and with the same fervour that Gibraltar has had its loyalty to our sovereign Queen Elizabeth II until she passed away, we declare our loyalty and our support and allegiance for now King Charles III, King of Gibraltar.
There are some who say that the king is merely a ceremonial position, a symbolic one. Can you just put into words, practically, what does a new sovereign mean for Gibraltar?
Well, we're very lucky that we have a democracy where we choose executive government, but we don't choose our head of state, because choosing a head of state would involve a process, as we see in other republics, where intellectually, of course, it makes sense to think that you might be able to choose every level of the hierarchy, but you've got to stop the functioning of the state when you're doing that plebiscite. In Gibraltar, we don't stop the functioning of the state. In the United Kingdom, we don't stop the functioning of the state because we are electing a government. The state under the crown is seamless unless you have a moment when the crown passes and we have the ceremonial aspects of the new sovereign being proclaimed. It makes things easier. Sometimes democracies don't always come up with results that rest easy with the whole of a population. You might have issues of controversy surrounding the choice that is made. We don't have that issue with our crown and head of state, because that is something that is constant, is seamless, and is provided for in our law, including the heirship that follows. Now, I believe in British constitutional monarchy. I'm part of it through my political involvement, whether I'm sitting on the opposition benches in Parliament or the government benches in Parliament, or indeed when I'm in the hierarchy of political parties just in the executive committee. We are committed to that. I don't think constitutional monarchy works everywhere, and I don't think republics work everywhere. We are very lucky with the monarchy that we have, with the constitutional settlement of the United Kingdom, with our written constitution that sets out all aspects of how things function. You barely have to give a thought to the aspect of the crown and the head of state in Gibraltar and in the United Kingdom, in the realms and in the Commonwealth, because it's all set out so clearly in the conventions that have been established, hard fought through civil wars, but now many centuries ago.
King Charles has pledged to continue his mother's devotion to public service, but of course it is a new era for the monarchy, and King Charles will want to put his own stamp on the role himself. I mean, what does it mean for the Commonwealth, because and the overseas territories as well, because there are many that are saying that we're at a crossroads now and it's time for a reset?
Well, this is the beginning of the Carolean era. It has to be different. I mean, Joe Bassano and Fabian Picardo have the same policies, but we express them in a different way. We represent them in a different way because we're not clones one of the other. And I think what His Majesty has done is pledge himself to service in exactly the same way as Her Majesty did, for life, representing exactly the same values, representing them in his way, expressing them in his way. And I think Gibraltar will benefit greatly from the prescience of a man who was an environmentalist before most. I mean, I think that King Charles has demonstrated already a wisdom beyond his years. Sometimes he has attracted derision from some commentators for views which later have been demonstrated to be right. His role now is not to express views publicly, but to express them privately to prime ministers who will see him every week, to others who he may meet. He will gently seek to guide, and I think that's what we expect from our crown and from our sovereign. And may I just say, Ros, of how proud I am of the way that Gibraltar has worked through this process, and today here, the process of proclamation by His Excellency and the parade that we've seen, all of Gibraltar's uniform bodies represented, the people of Gibraltar listening attentively and respectfully as the proclamation was made, as it would have been made 200-300 years ago, since Gibraltar became British, every time there has been a change of sovereign. Of course, aided a little by technology, you've transmitted into every home in Gibraltar, you've streamed into every mobile device in Gibraltar, and indeed to the whole world, who will have been able to see how well Gibraltar has done this. And I want to thank also those of you on the national broadcaster for your work these past few days.
Thank you. I imagine 1,000 years ago, when these ceremonies first began, they never imagined that this technology would exist. Of course, this proclamation dates back to those dates. But I want to ask you one final question, Chief Minister. When the Queen was crowned in 1953, she embarked on a Commonwealth tour, arriving in Gibraltar on the 10th of May 1953, and she was received here at the convent. There is talk possibly of a Commonwealth tour now for King Charles. Would you expect him to stop by Gibraltar? Because of course we know the Queen only managed to make it here once, even though members of her family have come over. Would King Charles come to Gibraltar, do you think?
So she came in 1954, not 53.
Apologies.
And I think it would be for me to start the relationship off on the wrong foot, as the head of his government of Gibraltar, to say what I would expect. But certainly I can tell you that Gibraltar would very much wish to see the sovereign come to Gibraltar. He needs no invitation. Again, it would almost be bordering on the rude to invite His Majesty to Gibraltar, because Gibraltar belongs to His Majesty and he needs no invitation to come here. But the people of Gibraltar would pine for a visit. We would be delighted with a visit. We wish a visit. The sooner the better, the more often that he and the Queen Consort might come to Gibraltar, any members of the royal family, the happier we would be. I see no reason why there should not be a visit. Look, talking about the diplomatic aspects of this, I do hope that as we have in the conversations that we've been having for a treaty between the European Union and the United Kingdom in relation to Gibraltar, I am starting to see a thawing of our relationship with our Spanish neighbours. I do hope that that continues. These things ebb and wane. I hope we are at the beginning of a new era of conviviality, of partnership, that we will be able to work with our neighbours and be respected for what we are and who we are. And look, I must say that in the past 3 or 4 days, we have seen a support for the people of Gibraltar from unlikely quarters in Spain. Partido Popular en la Línea, Juan Franco, Juan Carlos Bosch in San Roque, the mayor of Castellar, and also PSOE in la Línea, all of them expressing themselves as identifying with our grief on the death of our sovereign, a recognition of that. And at the level of Madrid, also condolences to the British people. Madrid itself has declared 3 days of mourning. Andalusia is in 1 day of mourning. There are a lot of British people in Spain. Let us take the best from the past. Let us cherish things like the ceremony here today, and let people around us see that Gibraltar's Britishness enriches this area greatly and brings something special which they should be welcoming. And so therefore, if there were to be a royal visit from His Majesty the King to Gibraltar, I hope it would be a moment which could be reflected as a bringing together of all the communities of the Campo de Gibraltar as well, around the Britishness of Gibraltar, which is never going to change, which is never going to be diluted in one drop in an ocean. We're not going to accept that at all. If anybody needed to see the pledge of allegiance of the British people of Gibraltar, they just needed to see the genuine grief that we have all felt and expressed on the death of our Queen Elizabeth II, and the genuine loyalty that His Majesty King Charles III will engender in Gibraltar, as he does already.
Chief Minister, thank you very much. I'll let you go on and carry on your duties today. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, there we have it. Chief Minister Fabian Picados speaking to us after the proclamation of the King. He spoke about his pride at the ceremony, the way it was conducted, and also about a thawing in our relations with Spain. It is possible then, if King Charles does embark on a Commonwealth tour, he might just stop in Gibraltar. We'll have to wait and see.
I'm sure our viewers and listeners will be keeping their fingers crossed. Thank you, Rosa Stengel, live from the convent, and some interesting comments by the Chief Minister in that interview, Christine, in respect of the international context in which Gibraltar mourns the death of Queen Elizabeth II at this moment in time when Gibraltar, together with the United Kingdom, is negotiating a future treaty relationship with the EU and, of course, its neighbour, Spain. And for our listeners, I should say, Christine Vasquez, GBC News editor, in case they've just joined us.
One of the things that he did say was that Gibraltar's Britishness enhances the area. So very much there is, Gibraltar is British, can be British. It doesn't change anything. It shouldn't change relationships. They can live side by side. It's totally compatible with everything else. And I think that today, because we have really come across as so British during these few days, she was our sovereign. King Charles will be our sovereign too. I think that perhaps it was something that he wanted to say today. This does not detract from anything. This is who we are. There's something that I was reminded of that Sir Peter told us on the day.
Former Chief Minister Sir Peter Caruana.
Sir Peter Caruana told us slightly cynically that because the Queen had been advised not to come to Gibraltar, she kept sending members of her family, was how he put it. And I think there's been a bit of that. She came in 1954, and after that it was the elusive visit. People kept asking, every time one of the members of the royal family came, they always asked, when will the Queen come to Gibraltar? Yes. And perhaps if there is that thawing of relations, if there is less pressure on the palace, then perhaps we can see King Charles coming here as king. As we know, he came here as prince, where he started his honeymoon, becoming King Charles III, coming to Gibraltar as king.
Excellent. So we're seeing some images, if you're watching us on GBC television, of the governor, Sir David Steele. He's a very personable individual. He likes talking to the public, and that's what he's doing now, just taking in, I'm sure, some of their views of how they've experienced this very historic day.
And he has, of course, he did want to do that on National Day and didn't get the chance to again. So Sir David Steele has not enjoyed a single National Day on the Rock since he came in 2020 because of the COVID pandemic. And then this year, of course, the celebrations were cancelled. So that's his opportunity as well to chat to people. He likes that. He sent a statement on what a warm welcome he'd received in Gibraltar and just praising the warmth of the people of Gibraltar.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you for choosing GBC Television and Radio Gibraltar. We were looking at some iconic images of the Queen's visit in 1954 just a few moments ago, and on Friday, my colleague Shalina Asamal caught up with historian Richard Garcia about that visit by the Queen to Gibraltar in 1954, and first asked him for his view on how Gibraltarians might be feeling upon hearing the sad news of her passing.
I think the first point which struck me, and I think will have struck quite a lot of people, is that everybody who is under about 75 will only ever have known one queen, one monarch, and that is Queen Elizabeth II. And older people, some of them, of course, will have been very young when King George VI was on the throne, and very few people would remember anything before that.
Now, many of those people you mentioned might actually remember her royal visit in 1954. What do you think that did for her presence on the Rock?
Well, there are several aspects of the royal visit that I think should be highlighted. First of all, we've got the political dimension, because, as we all know, Spain objected to the fact that the Queen was going to include Gibraltar as the last call on her great tour of what was the dying empire and the nascent Commonwealth. And we are told that the Foreign Office were advising the Queen to think very carefully and were more or less suggesting that Gibraltar should be omitted from the itinerary because there were fears that there were going to be some kind of incident, people coming in across the frontier into Gibraltar, which might disrupt the visit, and there were fears for the safety of the Queen. And the Queen overrode all those objections and insisted that Gibraltar should form part of the itinerary as had originally been planned. So I think that already says quite a lot about the Queen and her attitude towards Gibraltar and what others might have thought of Gibraltar at the time, others being people like General Franco in Spain. So that visit did go ahead, and of course the frontier was closed on the days of the royal visit to ensure that there'd be no disruptions from unruly entities from the other side. But let's turn now to the detail of the royal visit. Now, there'd been visits by ruling monarchs, reigning monarchs at Gibraltar before. King Edward VII was the first. And when he came, he arrived, like the Queen, on the royal yacht, but he stayed on the royal yacht in the night that he was in Gibraltar.
So what was different about this visit?
Well, the Queen did not stay on the royal yacht Britannia. She stayed at the convent. So the royal suite had its most important visitor ever in the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh actually using the royal suite. And the royal suite is located in the wing of the convent that was added by Lord Napier of Magdala. And it's on the ground floor and opens up onto the garden. And in preparation for the royal visit, the Director of Public Works was asked to ensure that everything was absolutely tip-top.
Of course.
And one element of the makeover that the royal suite had is that a brand new toilet seat was installed.
Interesting.
And immediately after the visit, the Director of Public Works went to see the royal suite and found that somebody had taken the toilet seat as a souvenir.
Wow.
So it's the most bizarre souvenir of the royal visit that one could ever think of.
Extremely memorable.
Yeah, and I've got no idea where that toilet seat has ended up, but there we are. The important thing, though, is that the Queen actually stayed in Gibraltar, on land, at the convent, as a guest of the governor of the day, Macmillan. So this was really breaking from previous tradition. So George V had been here, but again, he'd stayed on board the yacht. And his visit, George V's visit, that's the grandfather of Queen Elizabeth, that visit was a brief visit to Gibraltar en route to India. It wasn't a visit to Gibraltar, it was a visit to India, which happened to have a break at Gibraltar. So that's a big, big difference, again, from the previous royal visit. Her father, King George VI, had intended to come to Gibraltar in 1952. The post office in Gibraltar even prepared some stamps for that, royal visit 1952. But the king fell ill, so he never came. And so those who had prepared for a royal visit in 1952 found that it didn't actually happen until 2 years later in 1954. And as an aside, those stamps that were prepared in 1952 were all destroyed, except for 2 blocks, which are in the museum. I managed to secure them from London for presentation to the museum so they'd be in Gibraltar rather than outside our shores.
So we have those stamps here in Gibraltar
We have
now.
those stamps here at the museum.
Amazing anecdotes by the human treasure trove that is Richard Garcia, speaking to my colleague Shelina Asamoah, and there is an extended interview with him looking back on the Queen's life and her relationship with Gibraltar, and that will air tonight on GBC television at 9 p.m, one not to be missed. Thank you for choosing GBC Television and Radio Gibraltar on this historic day. We are bringing you, or have brought you, live coverage of the proclamation of the new king. We're going to be with you for a few more minutes. We wanted to reflect on the flags very quickly, Christine, because I know that that has caused a little bit of confusion. We mentioned it earlier, but the flags were lowered to mark the period of mourning. Now they've gone back up again, and can you just explain the thinking behind that?
Okay, so yes, they were lowered after the death of the Queen. They were raised yesterday ahead of the proclamation in London. The proclamation, of course, in St James's Palace yesterday, kept up 4 different proclamations in England. The second proclamation was read yesterday morning as well at the Royal Exchange in the City of London. And then today's proclamations, Gibraltar, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. So we've had that 21 royal gun salute from Devil's Gap Battery, and at around 2 o'clock flags will again go down to half-mast, and we will return to mourning until after the funeral. So
another impeccable parade, this one led by the new commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Matt Moore of the Royal Gibraltar Regiment. Another seamless 21 gun salute by Major Charles Bonfante. The regiment again have done themselves in Gibraltar proud on this important day.
The regiment certainly knows how to do ceremonial duties. We have a lot of ceremonial duties, I think, perhaps more than other places, and that is one thing, that they are well drilled. It must have been taxing for them, though, to have done 3 days
on the trot, yes,
of gun salutes.
Now, it would be remiss of us not to mention the royal visit of June by the Earl and Countess of Wessex. Of course, if you were in Gibraltar at the time, you couldn't, unless you were under a rock, you couldn't help but feel their presence. They really sort of lifted the mood, and there was a lovely feel-good atmosphere in town. We heard Ros and the Chief Minister discuss whether King Charles III might visit or not, but certainly this royal visit earlier this summer was a very enjoyable affair.
Although I must say, Jonathan, I've just looking at these shots, I've just felt a slight surge of anxiety. Do you remember how the flight was delayed and was turned back?
True.
So we had a whole bulletin of engagements for the royal couple, and then that flight turned back to the UK because there was a problem with the engine. So they arrived very, very delayed, but managed to fit every single engagement bar one.
And they were quite impressive in their ability to move through these social events in good spirits, and obviously they're very practiced at being able to meet somebody for only a few minutes, and to meet so many people, yet for each of those individuals it felt like a very special exchange. And I know that was true of some of the school children who they visited, and if I may say, she in particular was very obviously outstanding.
I think she really stole the show when she went paddleboarding. She tried her hand at golf. While we saw her, she went up to the Girl Guides and the Brownies. And of course, that's how they managed to get so much in, because they did split up their engagements. So Gibraltar got a double whammy.
So
that's the evening that they arrived. So just an hour after being in Gibraltar, they went to visit the Nautilus project. They had been met by the RAF, and then they went straight to Nautilus, and they must have been shattered that evening, because of course there was a lot of waiting around in London.
It was a BA flight that brought them, and they got a taste of some of the delays that people flying to and from Gibraltar occasionally experience.
There was talk at the time that they wanted to put on a private jet for them, but that they refused because, of course, both of them follow a very strict environmental agenda.
So their flight was delayed for nearly 5 hours due to a technical issue, and the walk down Main Street had to be postponed for the following day, and I think there was some nervousness about whether it might actually hinder or have an impact on the crowd of people that would be able to attend and take in some of the atmosphere. But in the end, there needn't have been any concerns because it was a special reception that they received.
We've just seen him at the visit to the naval base, and this is the Countess. This is when she visited the Special Olympics in Europa. That's her with her golf swing. She actually, I think I can say it now, sent a ball flying to the reporters, to the little group of reporters that were there.
And again, during this visit, we really saw the extent of media coverage that she attracted, and well, both the Earl and the Countess, of course, during their visit. International media here, from the UK and Spain in particular.
We have seen the Countess become increasingly close to the Queen. So over COVID, the Countess was one of the Queen's confidants, one of the Queen's, she stood by her, was very, very close. She is one of the people who will feel the loss very, very strongly as well. They were very close.
And we're seeing here the visit to Governor's Lookout, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it is the Governor's Lookout in the Upper Rock, where the Scouts are based. And this is the paddleboard visit that you mentioned there with Into Adventures at Sandy Bay.
Suppability, and it was quite funny because when we had a chat with her that evening at the convent, and she said, "Oh, I knelt down. I was not going to risk falling down."
Yes, I think they're well aware of the media scrutiny that they come under, and the last thing that you want in a royal visit is the metaphor of falling flat on your face in the water.
Yes, and it can't be easy, but they do it well.
They do. Right, Christine, so we checked with the government about the removal of notes, because of course the Queen's image is on a lot of our notes, and in the UK on the 30th of September, that's the last day that you'll be able to use UK £20 and £50 notes.
It's really sad, isn't it? I know that there is a transition, but it's a lifetime. It feels there's so many things that we're going to have to get used to like that.
Well, I dare say some people might hold on to one or two for prosperity. So the Gibraltar government has confirmed that the UK £20 and £50 notes are being withdrawn in Gibraltar too. So those will be replaced by new polymer notes. So as from the 30th of September, that'll happen, and you'll need to exchange your notes, or if you want to hang on to one for, a memory's sake, then that's your choice. But they won't be legal tender as from a day after the 30th of September. Now, one or two more things to mention before we leave, Christine. The funeral for Queen Elizabeth II, that's happening on the 19th of September.
Monday the 19th. So the government, the UK government, first announced that the day of the funeral would be a bank holiday, but didn't actually stipulate when the funeral was. And now that has been confirmed. The funeral is on Monday the 19th. As we were saying, the Queen's coffin has already left Balmoral and will rest in the throne room at Holyrood House Palace. It will be taken up the Royal Mile in Edinburgh to St Giles Cathedral tomorrow. It will rest there, will be flown to London on Tuesday. We heard a member of the House of Lords talking to Rosa Stengo earlier saying that on Wednesday afternoon, they would pay their respects. Of course, the Queen's coffin, she will rest in state, she will lie in state, and then, as we said, that funeral will take place on Monday the 19th.
And Christine, if I may ask you an unscripted question. We heard the Chief Minister mention or thank the national broadcaster for its efforts in recent days. Can I just put to you as the news editor that they've been a busy few days, to state the obvious, covering events?
I think they've been a very busy few days, and they've also come on the back of the OS-35. So, I mean, when I spoke to you and I said, I think the Queen is very ill, your reaction, I think we all were sort of...
Almost I can't take this. From a journalistic perspective, I'm not sure if we're capable of reporting on this now as we need
Yes, I mean, we had a very, very heavy week with the beached ship.
And on the back of a water crisis over the summer. And
on the back of...
A pandemic.
A pandemic, and on the back of Brexit. So yes, it has been, in terms of news, an amazing, amazing year. We found out, it was late when we found out. We had inklings, as we said, the royal doctors never actually talk about the Queen's health. That's something that's always very private. So I think the minute the doctors said, we are concerned, was what we heard. The BBC then started calling, we started liaising, and the way it works is the private secretary, there is a whole, so we know she died at 4:30, I believe it was. The private secretary has to tell the Prime Minister, and then the Prime Minister informs the heads of state of the 14 Commonwealth realms, and then the media is informed. So you have the sign outside Buckingham Palace. The fact that she died in Balmoral changed things. There was another operation in play. It caught us, so we heard the news an hour before our bulletin. So even though we were prepared with Operation London Bridge, it's still quite shocking news and quite a big story to have to cover.
Yes, indeed. And we should mention that, of course, while journalistically we front the coverage, there's camera people, production, engineering, radio, admin, support staff, all putting in a momentous effort to bring together the best possible coverage for what has been
the CEO running back from the beach after a little break that she managed to take, which lasted...
People have cancelled holidays, cancelled festivals.
That's right. And actually, on Friday, I've worked in GBC for 30 years. We did 8 bulletins. You know, the newsroom produced 8 bulletins. For me, I think that's
a record.
Record-breaking, but of course, it is a record-breaking story. This is history in the making.
Well, it's been a pleasure to sit alongside you today. Christine Vasquez, the GBC News Editor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great Britain, Gibraltar, has a new king. His accession to the throne will precipitate momentous change, from coins and notes, as we've heard, to the Commonwealth, royal finances, and perhaps the nature of British soft power across the globe. We'll continue to document it in the coming days, weeks and months. But for now, that's all from the GBC News team. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.